Good evening, everyone. So Ms. Ambrose is going to project our slides. I'd like to start by saying that this year we'll be presenting our FY24 budget, and it is below the tax cap significantly, so that we're happy to report that at the start. So if we go to second slide. So as you can see on the slide, we're projecting a $73,043,706 budget compared to last year's. There's a 1.51% increase from last year's budget. Special grant appropriations are extremely high due to ESSER funds that are coming due at the end of September, and then the ESSER 3, which is for the next fiscal year. So you'll see that bump over 2 years. Food service, there's an increase due to inflation, supply and demand. We've seen a lot of increase in food costs this year. And our capital improvement program represents both bonded and cash, and we have a slide later to represent those. Next slide, please. So local revenue shows a slight increase from the previous year, so it's up 1.8%. State revenues are down. There's a decrease in adequacy funds. So you see a decrease in about $2.4 million or 9.1%. Federal revenue has to do with some of our indirect costs related to grants. And then the tax line is based upon the tax cap calculation that we'll show in detail. Next slide, please. So if you skip right to the bottom, I know most of you are very comfortable with the tax cap calculation. The proposed budget that we have here tonight is $1.6 million under the tax cap, which is great news. Next slide, please. Historically, it's important to show the council and members of our public that in the last 13 years, there's been 32 positions cut from our budget. So when we've had tax cap compliant budgets, we've had to make cuts to personnel in order to do so over those years. So again, just historically, 32 positions. This year, I'm pleased to present a budget that is tax cap compliant and actually has new positions included in this budget. So you'll see from this, there are 18 positions that are included in our tax cap compliant budget. 11 of the 18 positions deal directly with the social emotional needs that have increased significantly in our schools. So as you can see, there are guidance counselors, interventionists, social workers, case managers. So very important to realize that these are new positions that our department heads have worked hard to propose and justify while all meeting the tax cap. So I'm very proud of our team for doing so. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Toddy to talk about our capital improvement program.
Good evening. So in the bonded capital improvement program, the first project is $100,000 allocated for district-wide exterior surfaces to include EIFS, masonry, and caulking. That money is going to be primarily the continuation of masonry repairs that we started on the old part of Gonick Elementary School and work that we're hoping to begin at the Spalding High School. The next and largest project is $1.5 million for Spalding High School Band and Chorus. And this is a project that the school board's been talking about for some time. It came through the 5-year committee to the building committee. And the Band and Chorus area at the high school is the old gym. The floor is the old gym floor. It's a 1939 wood floor. All of the parting walls inside that space are built on that floor. And the floor has failed. It buckles, it rises 3 or 4 feet every time the humidity goes up. We've lost space of the entire band and chorus for months on end during the wet season. So we're proposing to gut the entire space. New HVAC, new floor, new partitions, new finishes, new windows. This number is based on 20% architectural drawings that were completed by Banwell Architects and reviewed by EEI. So the budget, it's a 20% drawing budget now. And we're hoping to get the money to complete the drawings, get the project out to bid, and complete it. The next project is $80,000 from Maple Street Magnet School site work safety improvements. This is a project to improve emergency vehicle access, sidewalks, and crosswalks. It's a continuation of a project we were talking about last year. District-wide roof replacements is $200,000. I have, right now, there's 3 roofs that are at the end of their useful life expectancy. Chamberlain Gym, Middle School D-Wing, and the main roof on Maple Street. None of them is leaking right now. We don't intend to run out and start replacing these roofs, but we want to have the money in budget for when they do fail. They're at the end of their useful life now, so once they start leaking, we'd like to be able to replace them. District-wide library improvements, $130,000. This is primarily going to be spent at the McClelland Elementary School. The library was divided many years ago to make a computer room and a library, and now that we're one-to-one with computers, the computer room space isn't needed as much anymore. So we're going to remove some walls, put in some new floors and new furnishings to get the library up to meet current media center needs in elementary schools. And district-wide playground safety, $150,000 to replace aging play structures. Right now, the oldest structures in the district are at Chamberlain Street School. We're looking to make some improvements there. There are some more improvements at McClellan School that are needed. So the capital improvement program cash CIP, plumbing and HVAC upgrades, $25,000, electrical upgrades, $25,000, playground upgrades is $10,000. Not to be confused with the line above. The bonded line would be a whole replacement of climbing structures. The $10,000 is when we lose a single piece of equipment. That equipment is ridiculously expensive, and it needs to be manufacturer specific in order to keep all of its safety ratings. So that's just to get us out of a bind when something fails. Fire suppression upgrades, $10,000. District paving, sealing, crack filling, and striping, $150,000. That's primarily, we're looking at the inroad to the middle school is the worst road in the district now. Any remaining funds, we'd start sealing some of the parking lots that we've been fortunate enough to replace over the past few years. A floor cleaning machine, that's primarily going to go into the high school. Painting cycle, interior and exterior, is $40,000 for materials for painting. Cafeteria tables, we just bid them out. They're up to about $1,900 a piece, so we're hoping to replace 16 tables for $32,000. Food service equipment is a piece of equipment that hasn't been identified yet, but we have 11 commercial kitchens, and a single piece of equipment failure in any one of those kitchens would easily hit that number. Sod is a small amount, $5,000 to replace when we have some. We usually like to dress up the football field right before graduation and have some money to replace sod as we have failing areas. Building security is cameras and access control, $25,000. Flooring replacement, $20,000. And 45 kVA roll-up generators, 2 at $120,000. And this line primarily speaks to the fact that we don't have a really great plan when we lose power. We've got schools that have water heating loops, and when we lose power, we can freeze a school very quickly. I've seen schools freeze in a matter of hours. The plan, what we've done in the past is we've borrowed generators from water and sewer, but when the power's out, they need their generators to run their pump stations. They're not going to send them to the schools. We've also talked about being able to borrow generators through the fire department. Their access to generators would be contingent on FEMA having a state of emergency and flying in equipment. That equipment isn't going to be available. For FEMA to get generators on the ground, we're looking at probably at least a week. My buildings are going to be frozen up solid by then. So these 2 generators would be set up each with a set of cables that we could roll up to a building, connect to it, get the boilers and pumps going, just to keep some heat in the building. And the idea is that 2 generators would bounce around between schools. It's, ideally, any new school or any school would have a full backup generator to kick in when the power goes out, but we've not managed to incorporate that into the last 2 building projects because of cost overruns and budgeting requirements. So we're hoping to achieve this now just to keep our schools from freezing.
Thank you.
That's it.
So historically, I know this is small, and I reviewed the tape from last year, and there was some homework given to me. So. So Katie, if you go to the next slide. So historically, the slide you just saw there was our historical enrollment over time. One of the things that was asked of me was to make sure that we're looking apples to apples. And so we have the state, where we land in the state. But then as you see in future slides, and you're going to see in the immense amount of data that I've just provided you, you'll see us compared to the other 12 municipalities in our state, as well as the entire state. So this slide just shows that over the course of a 22-year period, the state of New Hampshire's increase to funding has risen 78.4%. And we've all talked about enrollments and proposed decreases. These are new state numbers. So the state's enrollment data has gone down by 21%. In that very same amount of time, Rochester's cost has increased by 68%. So 10.4 underneath the state, and our enrollment has dropped 12.4. So again, below the state averages. Next slide, please. This slide corresponds to the first set of documents that you have. You can see it says cost per pupil increases by district from 2000 to 22, and that's the mauve colored paper that you have. You see it's kind of a mauve title. You can see right now that there's only a few municipalities that had fewer percentage increases than us. One of the important things to note is only 6 of the 13 municipalities in our state had a smaller increase in educational costs over time. Next slide. This slide, which represents the blue packet that I handed out, so the second set of numbers, same list of municipalities, and of the 13 municipalities, only 2 had a smaller percent enrollment change than our city. So you can see Portsmouth and Dover were the only 2 municipalities that had a smaller enrollment decline than the city of Rochester. So that is my presentation.
Questions for the superintendent or Mr. Toddy? Councilor Bowden.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Toddy. We could back up to the, well, you don't need to, the CIP bond slide. I'm a little concerned about the $1.5 million. You said the floor heaves 3 feet. And I'm thinking that if the floor is heaving 3 feet, we've got a major underlying problem way beyond moisture. You know, I've seen a lot of heaved floors in my day. And 2, 3 inches, 4 inches, yeah, okay. 3 feet, wow. So I'm a little concerned about the price, and I'm concerned about the necessity to spend $1.5 million for this complete renovation of this entire space. How large a space is that, square footage-wise, would you guess?
So I'm just trying to do some math in my head right here. It's probably probably 12,000 square feet.
12,000, so fairly substantial.
Yeah, and the floor, so is a concrete slab is the base. Underneath it is a steam tunnel. So we know the conditions underneath the slab, and it's not it's moisture coming from the air. Problem was when it was a gym, it was a wooden floor that was built to move around. There's some support columns in the room that are bounded by cork, which is kind of a neat feature because the floor would expand and contract. The people that built it knew what it was going to do. At some point, 50 plus years ago, parting walls were put in, and they were pinned right into the concrete. So now the wood no longer has the ability to expand and contract. So for the past 50 years, the fibers of the wood have been fighting the desire to expand and contract, and it's finally failed, and it pops up. And it's shocking how high it goes. It's literally a 3-foot hump. So we've cut some relief cuts into the floor and capped that with some metal bonded on one side to allow for expansion. But we're still seeing, not necessarily 3 feet anymore, but we're still seeing a lot of movement in the room, and it becomes a trip hazard. So the cost you're seeing is not, we're not saying that's what it's gonna cost. What we're saying is this is based on 20% drawings. So if we approve the project, what we would do is complete the drawings with Benwell Architects to get to where we can actually put the project out to bid, and we'd get a competitive bid on the project, and we would spend what it costs at the time to do the project.
The bonding would actually reflect be reflected in the actual cost of the bid, I assume.
The purchase order would be the actual cost of the bid, and the line is pretty specific. It can only be spent on this, so if the purchase order were less than the bond, we would only bond the amount of the purchase order.
Well, thank you for that.
And it does include new HVAC systems as well.
That's very informative, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The other thing, if I may, Your Honor, and this, let's see, site work improvements for Maple Street Middle School. Last year, we gave $200,000 for site work there, and now we're looking for another $80,000. I did happen to drive by there today, and nothing's been done. So how do we know that we need another 80,000 when we haven't done even
So
moved a grain of
we're-
dirt yet?
That's a great question, and thank you. We're predicating that on the fact that we've had a 61% increase in the cost of liquid asphalt. So the cost of paving has gone through the roof, and we're looking at a CPIU of north of 5%. So in talking with, before we even kicked off with engineering, talking to our engineers, we don't believe that there'll be sufficient funds. And what we want to do is make sure that there's enough money in place, because we have a very short window to complete the project at that school. As you know, Maple Street's one of our highest performing schools, and they have an extended school year. So they stay a little bit later and they come back a little bit earlier. So we want to know that the funds are there, so when we do the project, we don't get tied up with not being able to do the project. So if approval of this money, what we'll do is we'll go out to civil engineering bid, and we'll create a full set of bid documents, and exactly like the process we talked about with the high school, we'll then put it out to bid, and the amount bonded would reflect the bid price. And this is really just an insurance policy, because we can come in under, we can't come in over.
Of course. So I assume that through this whole process, the parking situation's going to be improved there as well?
That's what, that is the goal, and we've already, I know the superintendent has spoken with the chief of police, and I've had some preliminary conversations with the engineering at the Department of Public Works, and we would invite those parties to be completely involved with the process and what we're proposing, and the drawings would, I'm sure, go over to Peter Norris's group and have them review it, and just get everyone involved to take a look at what we're doing and making sure that it's going to satisfy the needs of that part of town.
Thank you. May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
I do have a couple others, if I may. The district-wide roof upgrades.
Yes, sir.
So you're looking for another $200,000. And in looking at the CIP form, I see nothing going forward from this point. We have spent, over the last 6 years, about $635,000 on roof repairs and improvements. So I'm assuming that this is the end of the road for roof repairs. Is that a correct assumption?
I'm sorry I didn't bring it tonight. I maintain a list in an Excel spreadsheet of all of the roofs in the district, what kind of roofs they are, what the anticipated life expectancy of that roof is, the year of replacement, and the projected year for, when we need to come to get money. There is some money in budget for roofs, as I'm sure you've recognized. There's two lines that haven't been touched in a CIP with about $50,000 each. If all three of these roofs fail, those two lines would not be enough to complete the project. So again, the $200,000 is because we can't come in over, we can come in under. So we would begin allocating that money from the oldest dollars forward. There's also a line from fiscal '21 that has a balance, which I'm not including in my thought process, because that's going to go out to bid at some point, that money, or out to bond, I'm sorry. That money will go away. They'll bond that money, and the balance of that won't be spent. So this will allow us to move on from the old and start fresh, looking at these three roofs right now are on the radar. Off the top of my head, there aren't a lot of big roof projects over the next few years. I think the next really big one we'll be talking about is Slate at the high school, which is probably 10 years away.
So same kind of concern with paving. Over the last 6 years, we've spent north of $1 million on paving.
Absolutely, yes.
And so I'm hoping that, again, this is the final
And
step to take for a while.
I appreciate that, sir, and we're in really good shape with paving. We've managed to do a lot, and we've been doing it kind of, the middle school's a great example. Right now, we're talking about doing the in-road. We've been doing it kind of piecemeal and get it together. And you did hear in the line, it talks about paving, sealing, crack filling. So any balance of these dollars, we're going to go back to the lots that we've done and make sure that we have a robust program of sealing and crack filling to extend the life of the parking lots. It's not
It's
something.
absolutely an investment, not an expenditure anyway. So one final thing, if I may, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Just bear with me a minute. Playgrounds.
Yes, sir.
Again, over the last 6-year period, we've spent just north of $300,000 on playgrounds. So you had mentioned that the last remaining playground is Chamberlain Street. And I know that was last put up in just about 25 years ago, or maybe a little less than that. Because I actually helped to build it. So is this going to be like the last of the playground upgrades we're going to need for some time?
So the last single playground we did was William Allen School, and that was a $100,000 project for the single structure. So when we put this into perspective, the 100,000 is one set of structures, and we're hoping to go a little further than that. Some of the structures at Chamberlain you're talking about were probably there when you and I were in elementary school. There are some of, the old steel monkey bar kind of structures. There's a lot of that still out there.
It's still there.
Oh, yeah.
Those are dangerous.
Thank you. That's my point exactly. Will it be the end of playgrounds? I don't believe we'll ever see an end of playgrounds, sir. They sit outside, and they're the best place for kids to hurt themselves, and we want to stay right hard on top of that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, all right. Thank you for your indulgence. I appreciate your answers to my questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I noticed that during the tax cap, we lost a lot of teacher positions, but then when we came to the slide where we're adding positions back, I saw very few teacher positions being added back. I guess my question is, how does this affect the student-to-teacher ratio, and how does this affect the quality of the education that our students get?
So these were all requests from our principals. Again, COVID and other things that have impacted our school have necessitated a shift in some of the supports that we need to give students. You look at guidance counselors, 2 interventionists, those are teacher positions. So like a math interventionist, a reading interventionist, those are additional support teachers. Social workers, I wish we, in theory, I'd love our schools maybe not to have to provide that level of service, but we do need to support our students with social emotional needs. Again, counselors. Over 13 years, it's not a 1-4 because the needs have changed over time. That's the best I could describe that.
As a follow-up, with changes in technology, I've taken courses by computer, distance learning, that kind of thing. Are we making more use of technology?
Yeah.
So that, say, students can go off on their own and take a course, say, by computer, say, chemistry or biology?
Not totally autonomously, but so students can do that through VLAX at the high school level and middle school level. We have some students that have tried it at the elementary school, but that's a very self-directed learning model for young adolescents. Our approach is a more personalized. Our vision and mission includes personalized learning, which includes flexible content and tools for our students. So instructionally, if you were to come to one of our schools, you may go into a classroom, see a teacher sitting with 6 or 7 kids at a table, and then 2 other groups in the room doing different things with their laptops. So those are online digital programs that would be tied to our baseline scores, like we use NWA as a baseline diagnostic tool. So we can set up learning plans for students on what they're needing in their path to success in grade level standards. The targeted instruction are for all kids. So you may be the highest reading group, but you're meeting with your teacher. I might be the lowest reading group, and then I'm going to meet with my teacher based on what I need. And then the online programs would be suited to our needs individually. So yes, we do utilize technology to assist with our learning needs.
Very good, thank you.
Councilor DeRocha.
Yes, thanks so much. So if you could just, I know you briefly touched on social workers and how you sort of wish that maybe they weren't needed so much. Can you go explain a little bit about the ratio social worker to student? Like, is it 1 per school? Are there more than that in the middle school per se? What does that look like?
We actually don't have one in every school.
No.
No, we don't. So this year, the social worker that's going to see at the high school, we have 1 social worker for the entire high school currently. So again, just the volume has increased over the number of years, which is why we're trying to support our students with the current needs that we're seeing.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
Any other questions? I just have a quick question for Mr. Toddy on the cash CIP. Building security, I think the number was 25,000.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure we got plenty of grants over the last 2 years to improve our security in our school buildings.
Yes, sir. We still have our camera system has a lot of iterations over the years. Most of how we've expanded over the years is through grant projects. And we started with one system and we got some grant money and we added to it and we got the current generation of cameras and we got some more grant money, and we got the next generation of cameras. So we've got a bit of a hodgepodge out there, and we're at a place now where some of the things, when they fail and stop working, you can't get it off the shelf anymore because it's outdated technology. That's what this dollar amount represents, is when we have a failure like that, to be able to get the upgrade that we need to keep the system we have working.
Don't have to wait too long to fix it.
That's the idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor DeRosa.
Yes, thank you. Along the lines of building security, are there any things that, I know you're talking about upgrades and such, and I'm sure a lot of people have asked questions about school safely lately and, emergency preparedness. Can you speak to if there are any, outstanding needs that you really can't meet with your current budget and resources?
There's always needs for cameras and access control. Right now, we're going through a process. Every 3 years, each of our schools gets a review through Department of Safety, Homeland Security. They send out officers, and we sit down with the police department and the fire department, and we go through the entire school with a fine-tooth comb from the point of view of building envelope and building security. And then we bounce that off of fire code and fire security. There's a host of things that are out there that people could be doing. I think we do a really good job of keeping our kids as safe as we can. A couple of the projects that we're talking about now about building a new elementary school is going to get rid of the modulars. It's going to bring everybody in all of our schools into a perimeter at their locus. I think it's a really great step that we're taking. So if your answer is there more you can do on security? The answer is always there's more you can do on security. At some point, though, we have to take a fiscal responsible look at what we're doing and say, okay, we're doing the best that we can, and we're keeping our kids safe.
Awesome. Thank you for, yeah.
Just to add to this topic and to the mayor's question about grants, so the SAFE grant that was out there, we just replaced the middle school entrance with the SAFE grant that we received. There was a second iteration of that grant that was released. We applied for that, which we were hoping to replace some of our security cameras. Unfortunately, we were not granted the second allotment. So we did try for that, and if we were to receive that, we probably wouldn't have had this line in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Hearing no other questions, thank you for your presentation, both of you. Thank you very much.